Welcome, Guardian. I am Ray, and I am here to expose the secrets of the universe. So prepare yourself. In Gnosticism, the demiurge is the creator god of the Old Testament that they believed was foolish and arrogant and malevolent, that kind of kept humanity in slavery and suffering. A great example is in the book of Job, where God basically makes a deal with the devil and says, go ahead, you can destroy Job's life all you want. He will still remain loyal to me. The devil then proceeds to kill Job's family and all of his livestock, strip him of all of his wealth, ruins his health, and causes all of his friends to basically say, yes, all of these terrible things happened to you because it is your fault. You did something wrong. When Job finally has had enough, he goes to God and confronts him and says, why are all these terrible things happening to me? And God says, well, who are you to question my authority? You are nothing. In the end, Job agrees and humbly bows down before God. And in doing so, God restores him of everything that he lost, but in greater quantities. In Carl Jung's book, Answer to Job, from my understanding, he believed that the first time in biblical history a man rose above God in terms of morality and consciousness. God, before this moment, was like a hyper-masculine dictator that was obsessed with perfection. Every time humanity would disobey his orders, he would always send some kind of hellfire to destroy everybody and punish them. However, God's encounter with Job would change everything. It wouldn't be until this point in which God became aware of his imbalance. Carl Jung proposed that this situation, this encounter with Job, was the precursor for sending Christ to restore balance. Christ was needed to restore the feminine balance of unconditional love to his hypermasculine authoritarian personality. Some other examples that reflect the Gnostic view of the Old Testament God is Leviticus 26. God basically says, if you follow my rules and do everything that I say, I will give you all of these many great things. But if you don't do what I say, then these will be your punishments. Let's see what we got here. We got number 1. The first punishment is sudden terror and wasting diseases that will destroy you. Next we got your enemies will steal your crops and eat your food. Shame. Number 3. You will be defeated by your enemies and a slave to those you hate and live your life in constant fear. If after this you still don't listen, then I shall punish you 7 times greater. All your efforts to plant food for yourself will fail. Number 5. If you still don't listen, 7 times more you will be punished. I will send wild animals after you, and they will eat your children. They will destroy your cattle, and they will ruin your livelihood. And if you still don't listen, 7 times more you shall be punished. I will hit you with more plagues, and I will starve you for breaking the covenant. And if you still don't want to listen, guess what? Another 7. You will eat the flesh of your children, and I will destroy all your places of worship, and I will lay ruins to your cities and your land. And then lastly, anyone who has survived this, they will live their life in constant fear. Seems kind of anticlimactic, but all this can be avoided if you simply repent for your sins and the sins of your ancestors. Apparently, even if you had nothing to do with it, you still have to pay for that. Now, it makes sense why the Gnostics believed the demiurge or the Old Testament God was a tad bit narcissistic, arrogant, and evil. But what people don't often understand about God in the Bible is that God's evolution is actually the evolution of human consciousness, because each human being has a seed of the divine with them. We all have one drop of God's essence from the ocean of infinite bliss known as the kingdom of heaven. But as a whole, as a collective consciousness, we make up kind of like God's lake, kind of like a mini version of God. So the nature of humanity's collective consciousness at the time is reflected in their relationship with God. And since the beginning of human history, humanity has always had to uphold this masculine dominance to protect ourselves from the destructive and chaotic nature of Mother Nature. But human ideas about God are fundamentally and eternally always wrong, because by definition, God created the human beings. So before even a single word is discussed, God is beyond all words, beyond all language, and beyond all thoughts. God does not exist in the way we think because we try to confine God into a concept in our minds. And this concept can never be the true God. We can, however, kind of come to this good enough realization or understanding. I will share with you my experience with the creator of the universe. So when I was 26 years old, I went up into the mountains to do an initiation of sorts. I brewed up a batch of this psychedelic drink containing mescaline that was made from the San Pedro cactus. I traveled up into the mountains of the El Dorado National Forest in California, just west of Lake Tahoe. I remember as I was driving through the forest, I had this feeling that the trip had already begun. Like I could intuitively feel the presence and effects from an experience that I was about to have. I realized pretty quickly that there was snow all over the ground, which I hadn't planned for, but it didn't seem like a big deal at the time. Little did I know that once the sun drops below the tree line, it gets very cold. But I digress. I found a cool spot hidden on the side of an off-road, and I set up my tent. I take out my copper jug with the San Pedro juice, and I take and drink the first cup. And I drink the first cup, which was bitter, but it wasn't too bad. After about 45 minutes, I began to have some doubts on whether I even made the juice correctly. However, a moment soon came that I realized that something was terribly off. I was walking down an icy path when, out of nowhere, some snow that had gathered on top of a plant on the ground next to me had just kind of fallen off to the ground. And let me tell you, in that half second, I experienced more fear than I had ever experienced in my entire life. It was like my entire soul jumped out of my body for a split second. And this was the moment I realized that I was in for quite the ride. I settled down at a nice place next to a stream as the psychedelics took greater and greater effect. I remember the algae at the bottom of the pool of water was this kind of dark neon green, and it kind of sparkled and fluttered, and it was spectacularly beautiful. Just an incredible radiance. I sat here for a while and enjoyed the feelings of bliss and joy until I decided to go back and make my way up to camp. And shortly I would have an encounter that I would not soon forget. As I made my way back, I had a brief thought that, what if I get lost? What if I don't make it back? But immediately that fear dropped away when I realized, oh, I'm already in the hands of God. There is no danger here. When I found my way back to camp, I got out my big pillow, my pen and my paper, and the jug with the rest of the San Pedro drink. That is when I downed the rest, which became increasingly more difficult and more disgusting and bitter. But I made it through. I finished. I sat down in the snow and immediately realized something of great importance. And that was, my life was no longer in my hands. I was completely at the mercy of my experience, and there was absolutely nothing that I could do other than sit exactly where I was sitting. Any sense of free will and ability to control my fate was thrown out the window. One of the first things I wrote down was, I'm sure glad I'm not tripping balls in the middle of the wilderness right now, because I would be screwed. I couldn't help but laugh at the predicament that I was now in. I sat there and continued to write any time I had the desire to. But here is where things got interesting. At some point, I came into contact with a celestial being known as the Ouroboros, which is the symbol of the snake eating itself. It came to me in the form of the trickster, in which I will soon explain why. This wasn't like a visual hallucination, but it was like a direct download into my mind. Although there was flashes of different images. I knew at this moment that I was communicating with the spirit of the universe, what I later called the second creator. I understood that it did not know how it got to its position of power, only that its role was essentially as the mind that governed the universe. It brought me to the beginning and the end of the universe and showed me how everything was created. I remember afterwards I felt like I had aged a few thousand years. But then I remembered that, I'm actually timeless. The reason the universe is the Ouroboros or the trickster is because the nature of our reality here is paradox. The universe is constantly giving birth to itself and at the same time is destroying itself. The trickster is an androgynous celestial being, which means that it is neither male nor female. This is evident in the symbol of the Ouroboros. That is, it contains the phallus, that is the creative or penetrating force, and it contains the womb, that is the receiving or destructive force. The mouth receives and destroys, and the tail feeds and nourishes. So too the universe contains the positive and negative aspects, the black holes that receive and destroy, and the stars that create and give life. Anytime you tell yourself that, God sure does have a sense of humor, the trickster aspect of God is what you are referring to. The trickster has one cosmic joke. This is the joke. The trickster has one cosmic joke, and that joke is life, and the punchline is you. The joke is that we are born into tragedy. We are forced into a world of suffering and death, in which we are constantly striving to make meaning out of our existence. But in spite of all of our attempts, all we do is futile, because soon everything will be washed away by the tides of time, and we will be as if we never had existed in the first place. But yet, at the same time, life is actually a comedy. When someone dies, I say, mourn for the body, but rejoice for the soul. That our life here on this planet is but one temporary stop on an infinite journey. That we never truly die, and who we believe we are never really existed in the first place. And that the purpose of life is simply to live. Life itself is the purpose. Everything is perfect exactly as it is. And all will forever and always be okay, no matter what happens to us. All of our suffering is but a temporary experience that will soon feel like a distant dream. When we are born into this life, we die. And when we die from this life, that is when we are truly born. All who are spiritually awakened are no different than those who learn how to lucid dream. In this life, we are asleep, but in death, we awaken. This is the paradox of our reality. I call the trickster god, or the Ouroboros, the second creator, because the universe is like a self-sustaining organism that is always in a constant state of death and renewal. In this sense, the universe is its own creator. However, this is not the true creator because something gave rise to this self-sustaining process in the first place. And we will soon discover what that was. You see, when I was about 17 years old, I began on this journey to discover what I called the theory of existence. I spent many years contemplating the nature of the universe and came to some profound realizations, such as understanding the secrets of the Philosopher's Stone. However, it wasn't until this psychedelic experience did I come to true understanding. The celestial being took all the ideas that I had come up with up until this point, wrapped them up in a nice little box and bow, and then presented them back to me. The following is what it revealed. It showed me how the universe began, how the universe will end, and how the universe will inevitably begin again. You see, the universe is based on very simple mathematical principles that we can easily reverse engineer. There are only three fundamental elements that exist. There is positivity, there is negativity, and there is neutrality. The positive creative force manifests in the form of stars. The negative destructive force manifests in the form of black holes. And the neutral element manifests as formless space, which has the value of 0. However, positivity and negativity are not actually two separate things, but two polarities of one thing. When you combine these two forces, you have a force that goes upward and outward, as well as downward and in. The result is an infinite force that goes in all possible directions. So we are left with two remaining things, an infinite force and 0 space. But in fact, these two variables are not separate either. These are also polarities of the same one thing. You have infinite nothingness and infinite everythingness. When you put these two back together again, you have what is called the absolute, or the totality of everything. In other words, the one true God. Mathematically speaking, the equation of the universe is 0 divided by infinity equals 1. Because both infinite nothingness and infinite everythingness are both the value of infinity, and therefore go into each other once. The equals 1 is the universe or existence as we know it. However, the infinite force and 0 space begin before the Big Bang. The equation is literally the formation of the universe in action. The combination of the two variables create the result. Everything begins in the totality of everything, or absolute oneness. This is God in its ultimate state. However, in order to have experience, we need duality. We need two. You need something to experience and something to have experiences. The Absolute separated itself from one into two. God the Father, that is the seed of the universe, infinite energy, and that divine intelligence that pervades all of existence. And God the Mother, that manifests as the womb of the universe, the empty vessel in which all of existence is able to arise. And so the creation of the universe is a divine sexual act. After the one becomes two, the two forces then merge back into each other, because now that they exist as polarities, they have an attraction. Just as how the feminine and the masculine are attracted to one another. As these two primordial forces merge back together, the infinite everythingness that is the seed of the universe, this divine energy gets funneled down into the singularity of the black hole. One single tiny point. The energy begins increasing in intensity. As it is focused to the singular point, it becomes a powerful beam of light energy, the phallus of creation. The black hole not only acts as a negative force that pulls in or receives, but it is also space, an empty vessel. Black holes are like data storage centers in which they have a certain threshold of information that they can receive. As this primordial beam of light energy focuses upon the singularity, the black hole begins to fill up. The light beam increases in intensity until a magical moment happens. In this divine sexual act of creation, the black hole eventually reaches its capacity. Because these two opposing forces are of equal value, when they come into balance with one another, they cancel each other out. I call this the great equilibrium. The black hole can no longer sustain itself and implodes and explodes at the same time. The entirety of all existence that was focused on one tiny singular point is then scattered infinitely in all directions with unfathomable power. and thus the Big Bang. That is, the Divine Mother giving birth to existence as we know it. This infinite energy is slowed down all the way to zero, with all of reality manifesting in between, with everything operating at its own unique frequency of existence. That is why Nikola Tesla said, if you wish to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. The universe, the outcome of the merging of these two forces, is a reflection of that initial totality, the first absolute oneness, that is the ultimate state of God, the original non-dual state. And this non-dual state is your true nature as consciousness here and now. You see, you are the creator. And we are all the same one consciousness experiencing itself through an infinite array of different forms. God is simply experiencing and enjoying itself, and you are that. You are the power that created the universe. You are infinite, limitless, eternal being. But in order to really enjoy God's game of hide and seek, we had to forget our true nature in order to be authentic in our experience. That is the cosmic joke. You are the limitless pretending to be limited. You are the eternal pretending to be temporary. And you are God pretending to be a human. You see, God is the only thing that is. And to see this truth, that is awakening. This is enlightenment.